Hi everyone, Wrinkly Shirt Tano here, the internet's busiest music nerd. And it's time for a review of we're not doing a review at all. It's actually our weekly track roundup where I go over what I felt were the best and worst tracks of the week. Let's get straight into it with first a mention of our Amazon associates link down there in the description box. If you live in the US, you click on that. Anything you buy on Amazon after that, we get kickback from it. Does not add to your overall price, supports the channel, supports this segment. We also have a similar thing going on with the good people over at Turntable Lab. We have a link down there in the description for them. Anything you buy on their site, we get kickback from that. You can buy some excellent vinyl pressings of very colorful vinyl pressings of albums that I have reviewed and more, as well as like some audio equipment, turntables, speakers for your budding record collector. Okay? All right, let's get into the tracks with what I felt were the worst tracks of the week. Just a few tracks this week, just a few. Don't want to torture myself too much. And the tracks this week, they're not even the worst in the world. I heard there was a new Jake Paul song, but, you know, who wants to torture themselves on purpose? Who wants to hurt themselves on purpose? You know, honestly, I'm not a masochist. Is that the word I'm looking for? I think I'm looking for that word. So I'm probably not going to talk about that, but I will talk about the new A$AP Ferg and Lil Yachty song, Aw Yeah. Again, not the worst in the world, not the worst I've ever heard from Ferg, certainly better than a lot of what was off his last album, but definitely disappointing considering the kind of chemistry and excitement that I wanted to hear with these two names on a track for, I think, the first time, number one. And number two, the beat's kind of bland, beat's kind of weak, and there's not really in terms of funny or memorable or clever lyrics across this track, especially from Lil Yachty. It just kind of sounds like since Ferg's last attempt to go blatantly commercial with his last record, he's trying to go back more to that sound he forged on Trap Lord, but everything he's coming up with is noticeably weaker and paler in comparison to that material. So I really don't know what he's going to do. Can he go back to his old sound but make it sound as exciting as it was originally? Maybe, but I kind of doubt it at this point given this track and two other tracks, because he dropped 3 tracks in one day. And, you know, the other 2 were slightly better than this, but nothing that I'm really thinking about returning to. So that's kind of my feelings on this track. Moving on from there, we have a new track from Jaden Smith, titled Batman, which, man, if you want to cringe, watch the music video for this song with the sound off. If you want to double cringe, watch it with the sound on. Oh, he's so crazy, and not in a good way, in the kind of way that you're crazy when you're sheltered off from reality. And I really don't know what to say or what to do other than just to laugh at this, because there's really not anything else you can do. And finally, I'll mention, unfortunately, here the new Action Bronson single, Let Me Breathe, which, despite it being labeled as a single, unfortunately is not a single at all. It's actually just a throwaway freestyle posing as a single. Not a whole lot here memorable, in terms of bars. A lot of the singing across the track is pretty weak. Not a strong hook on the song either. The beat is kind of quirky, but that's really the only thing it has going for it. Kind of unfortunate considering the amount of potential I saw in Action Bronson early on, and he's come out with some very good projects. But it seems like every single time he gears up to drop something like big and commercial, it just sort of falls short for me in some kind of way. And for me, that's kind of happening on this track too. Hopefully, you know, whatever he's gearing up to release in the future is better than Mr. Wonderful. But this single does not have my mouth watering, and I'll leave it at that. All right, those are the worst tracks of the week. Just keeping it short there. Let's get into the songs I was kind of met on, kind of on the fence with, but still wanted to mention. Want to give a shout out to Itchy Leg. That's not a band. That's not anything. It's just my leg being itchy. Want to give a shout out to The Horrors with this new track titled Machine. The Horrors are finally returning back to a noisier, darker, more dense sound on this one. They're sort of mixing some of the shoegaze elements and the dream pop elements they've been toying with like a little bit of noise, a little bit of distortion, while, again, it's not as frantic, and it's not as intense, and it's not as powerfully dark as some of their earlier material. They're moving back in a more aggressive direction with this new track over here, and I'm liking the sound. Again, I'm liking how dense the track is, liking how noisy it progressively gets. A lot of cool qualities about the production on this track, though I wouldn't say I'm like completely sold on the lead vocals, the tune, which is kind of buried on the song. Moving on from there, Calvin Harris, new track Feels, featuring Pharrell Williams, Katy Perry, Big Sean. It's not a bad single. Funky, kind of irresistibly dancey disco beat. Pharrell and Katy Perry complement each other pretty well on the hook. And the Big Sean verse toward the end is sort of corny, leaves a lot to be desired. But it is a decent single, one of the better singles I've heard from this Calvin Harris album so far. Dizzee Rascal has a new track out titled Space, which is just bars, 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 bars. Some really impressive lyrics on this thing. Cool instrumental, some little left field production on this thing. Some of his delivery on this track, I think, leaves something to be desired. It's a little middle of the road. It's just kind of hanging in the yellow. I wish it was a little bit more intense. But again, lyrically, there are a lot of cool things on this track, and again, I think the production adds a lot to the mix as well. So again, if you're looking for those UK bars, some flashy UK lyricism and flows, then check this track out. Everything has a new track out titled Can't Do, which unfortunately I was pretty excited about, considering how much I loved the band's last record, how much I like a lot of tracks from the band's debut album. But this new track over here, despite the band being on their last record, in my opinion, one of the more interesting groups in pop music, because their approach is so progressive, elements of math rock getting worked in there, elements of progressive rock getting worked in there, elements of art pop getting worked in there. But on this new track over here, it sounds like they're just kind of playing it really, really safe. I mean, of course, the really strange nasal lead vocals are still there, but that's actually kind of another one of the problems with the track, because the can't do the can't do hook on this song, it's really incessant to the point where it's just like, give me like a little bit more space here in between each repetition of that refrain, in between each hook. A bulk of this song is kind of taken up by the hook, repeating again and again and again and again. You just can't quite get away from these very shrill, nasally vocals, which, again, has been an eccentric quality of the band that, while it may come off as annoying to some people, and I acknowledge that they're weird, I never felt like they sort of overdid them so much that their songs weren't listenable. Over here, I feel like they're kind of bordering on that. Again, it's kind of especially a bit of a disappointment to hear the instrumentation kind of becoming a little less intricate, a little less progressive, a little less adventurous, and kind of swapping all of that out for something a little more simple and straightforward and plain. So I don't know. Hopefully this is just kind of the vibe of the single, and the deeper cuts are a bit more intriguing, and those kind of help build up this track in the context of the track list. But as of right now, not that excited just based on this track alone. The Killers have a new track out titled The Man, which surprisingly I thought was pretty decent. Had an irresistibly funky and danceable kind of instrumental, a little bit of rock and a disco vibe in it. Some of the vocals Brandon Flowers was bringing to the table in the first part of the track had a real like David Byrne kind of vibe to them. In the second part of the track, that kind of melts away a little bit, but it still sounds pretty great. The lyrics kind of leave a little bit to be desired on this track, but outside of that, it's a decent cut. Am I anticipating I'm going to love the new Killers album or something? Probably not, but this song is actually not really all that bad, considering that I've never really considered myself a Killers fan. Next, the Pains of Being Pure at Heart have a new song out titled When I Dance With You, which is actually one of the project's more synth pop oriented tracks. Really busy, like unrelenting beat on this thing. The song is just so impossibly feel good. The chord progression is a little familiar, sounds kind of like your run-of-the-mill 80s pop tune, but I actually think it's one of the Heart's, or the Pains rather, better singles in a long time. So I don't know. I guess I'm kind of looking forward to the new record. This song is certainly sweet and very pleasurable, very enjoyable. It's not like the greatest thing I've heard in the world, but it's certainly a great track. As far as like a the first thing in a while I've heard from this project that's been exciting, semi-exciting. And finally, I want to shout out the new Arcade Fire track, Creature Comfort, in this section of the video, which, man, Arcade Fire are really not giving up this idea. They're going to do a dance album. They're going to do like a synth pop album. They're going to do like a kind of indie-tronic sort of album. Again, it's not a phase, Mom. This is what we're doing now. You know, as much as I was disappointed in Reflector, there were some dance tracks on that album that I thought were pretty great. And I'm yet to hear a dance track on this new album as far as singles thus far that is fantastic. That's amazing to me. You know, I loved Reflector as a single, but I feel like everything I've heard so far from this forthcoming album is at least slightly disappointing. You know, at least slightly disappointing. You know, this track over here, Creature Comfort, I think instrumentally is certainly superior than the flaccid disco of the last track the band released. But the lyrics on this track are so supremely cringe. Not that I disagree with the sentiments of a lot of the lyrics that Wynn sings on this track, but it seems like he's just throwing them out there so plainly, so unpoetically, that he's just trying so hard to make a statement about these issues, you know, just to kind of get people to agree with him, or just kind of like, you know, because it's so in vogue right now to be saying like, hey, here, I think this about this, I think this about that, when, you know, previously, I mean, Arcade Fire, not the most political band. I mean, you know, certainly, you know, they made some cool statements on the suburbs, which, you know, do get kind of rung again, kind of on this new track over here, but to a less poetic and a less, I guess I want to say, graceful degree. But outside of the instrumental, this track is kind of a mess. You know, I do like the synths in this thing. The bubbly beat is really fun. If I ignore the lyrics, I kind of want to dance to it. But, you know, outside of that, I'm not really digging this track. You know, I am kind of semi-intrigued to see where Arcade Fire takes this new album, because it seems like they're really going to 100% go into this dance synth-pop direction. But again, the substance of the songwriting and the performances are leaving a lot to be desired. And let's get into what I thought were the best tracks of the week. One, Algiers, Cleveland. This band is back with a new track. They are continuing to blend elements of gospel, of soul, of post-punk, of electronic music, hip-hop, as well as like protest music, into a menagerie of things that just should not work, and yet they kind of do. I mean, I will say that I think the vocals are a little much on this track. At least they were for my first couple of listens. But as I sort of acclimated myself to that and kind of got more into the lyrics and, you know, sort of started eating apart, or pulling apart rather, what was so interesting about the instrumental, because there are a lot of cool like choral vocal samples on it, a couple beat switches which are pretty cool. I actually became pretty enamored with the track. Again, try it for yourself. Really cool song. Algiers continuing to blend genres in a way that no other band is, with some really great performances too. I want to give a shout out to Chelsea Wolfe for her new track, 16 Psyche, new album on the way. Horrifying cover. It's horrifying. And this track over here is one of her heaviest in a while. Kind of has like this weird alt rock, very goth metal inspired verse. And then when the chorus flies in, man, the guitars are so goddamn heavy and powerful, and her voice really kind of cuts through them like a blade right through your skin, and blood spills out everywhere. It's gory, it's ugly, it's dark, and it's beautiful. From there, I want to give a shout out to the new DJ Khaled track, Wild Thoughts, featuring Rihanna and Bryson Tiller. Yes, I actually did enjoy this track quite a bit. I think the Maria Santana guitar piece that's worked into the track is a little awkward. It's not as smoothly incorporated into the instrumental as I think it possibly could be, but I love the boom, quick little bass line and groove of the track a lot. Love the instrumental. It's very simple, does a lot with a little. Rihanna is incredibly charismatic on this track. I think she's great. And even Bryson Tiller is like, okay. I mean, the vocals are not the vocals, but rather the lyrics are super sexual, super vulgar. Don't know if that's going to turn some of you on or off. I thought it was a pretty sexy track, pretty nasty ass track. And moving on from there, Washed Out has a smooth house-inspired new track titled Hard to Say Goodbye. Love the beat on this thing. The vocals are okay. I mean, as to kind of be expected on a Washed Out song. But I was so enamored with the hypnotic and dreamy, sensual groove of the song, I just couldn't say no. Had to incorporate it in this part of the video. Want to give a shout out to the new Queens of the Stone Age song, The Way You Used to Do. I like this track. I think it's a good song. I'm excited to hear new Queens of the Stone Age. Want the new record to be great. I guess I will say I do have a slight reservation with this song, though. You know, it is one of the better singles of the week, no doubt. No question. One of the better singles of the week. I do wish it sounded less like, you know, I was listening to a really like sleaze ball type of ZZ Top ish type of song. You know, but it is a decent tune, you know. What I loved so much about the band's last record is the guitar tones. The production was so heavy, was so awesome. Not so much the case here. You know, I think the sound is a little bit more flat. You know, definitely not as heavy or as thick and as vivid. You know, but still, I think the performance is there. I like some of the vocals on the thing. I wish it sounded a little more devilish too, but I don't mind Queens of the Stone Age going into a different direction. You know, obviously they don't want to write another Like Clockwork. I'm willing to sort of hear the band out. The tune isn't bad. And, you know, again, willing to hear the band out and sort of see through what they're doing in this different direction, this slightly different direction. Bones has a new track out from a new project, and the single, or rather one major track on his latest project. You know, check out the Team Sesh SoundCloud, or check out Team Sesh on Twitter if you want to keep up to date with every single thing Bones does, because I know he puts out a lot of material. I don't review all of it because, you know, he's very prolific. I don't cover every single thing he does, but I do want to shout out this huge track he has out over here titled Sean Paul Was Never There to Give Me the Light, featuring Danny Brown. This track is, in this section of the video, the best tracks of the week, because the chemistry on this track is amazing. The way Danny and Bones play off of each other on this track is fantastic. I'm actually really impressed with Danny's verse here. I think one of his better features in a while. The beat is monstrous. Bones does his thing as well as he typically does it, you know, as a lyricist, as a rapper, you know, but just the fact that he sort of conceived this track and kind of orchestrated it and pulled it all together, I think is sort of another stroke of genius for him. So again, fantastic track. Love the way that they played off of each other here. Great production, good lyrics. And make sure that, you know, if you hear any track this week that I recommend to you, make sure it's this one. And finally, I want to give a shout out to the new Guerilla Toss song, Skull Pop. Guerilla Toss sounding way different on this new crop of tracks from the forthcoming record. Definitely not as shrill, noisy, or as, you know, difficult to digest. You know, still though, sounding very experimental, very post-punk inspired, very odd. This new track over here has a lot of very tight, danceable beats. It's slightly electronic. Some of the guitar work on here is sort of off-kilter, off-beat purposefully to kind of be a little disorienting. And the vocals, the lyrics are, you know, really odd and abstract and weird. You know, this is exactly what I like to hear from my left field post-punk bands. And, you know, I'm just kind of excited to hear the new record. You know, I've always sort of seen, a lot of potential in what Guerilla Toss has done, but I've never loved an entire record. You know, this sort of sounds like to me that, you know, this could potentially end up happening, you know, based on what I'm hearing so far from these singles. And I'm going to leave it at that, guys. Those were the best, worst, and kind of meh songs of the week. Again, remember our Amazon Associates link is down there in the description, as well as our Turntable Lab link. Hit those, pick up some stuff for yourselves, treat yourself. And I will see you guys in the next video. You're the best. Forever.